Here is a soothing, story-form narration of Jesus walks on water, written to flow gently like a bedtime story. Jesus walks on water, a soothing story for rest and peace. As the golden light of evening began to soften across the hills of Galilee, Jesus quietly gathered with his disciples near the shore of a great, shimmering lake. They had spent the entire day together, feeding thousands of people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, a miracle so breathtaking that the crowds were still murmuring about it in wonder. But now, as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky, Jesus felt the need to be still. He gently instructed his disciples to climb into their wooden boat and row ahead of him to the other side of the lake, to a place called Bethsaida. He would meet them there, he said, in his own time. The disciples nodded, trusting him, and pushed the boat off from the shore. The water lapped softly against the hull as they took up their oars and began to row. Jesus watched them go, then turned and walked slowly up the hillside alone to pray. There on the quiet mountain, under a vast canopy of stars, Jesus knelt and spoke to his Father. The world below was still. The night air was cool and gentle, and for a long while there was only the sound of the wind moving through the grass, and the distant call of a night bird, and the deep, peaceful silence of the holy. Hours passed. Out on the water, the disciples had been rowing steadily, but the wind had turned against them. The lake, calm and glassy at first, had begun to shift and stir. Waves rose and fell beneath the boat. The oars dipped and pulled, but the men found themselves straining harder with each stroke, working against a wind that seemed to push them back as soon as they moved forward. The night grew darker. The shore behind them had long since disappeared. They were somewhere in the middle of the lake, in the deep hours before dawn, that quiet, heavy time when the world feels most still and most uncertain all at once. And then one of the disciples looked out across the water and saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. There, in the pale shimmer of the early morning light, was a figure walking toward them across the surface of the water. Not swimming, not in a boat, walking, calmly, steadily, with each step pressing gently upon the waves as though they were nothing more than soft, solid ground. The disciples stared. Their oars went still, and fear rose up in their chests like a tide. "It is a ghost," someone whispered. They cried out, some in fear, some in disbelief, their voices carrying out over the dark water. But then came a voice, clear, warm, unmistakable. "Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid." It was Jesus. The disciples blinked. They looked at one another. And then one of them, bold, impulsive, always reaching, spoke up. It was Peter. "Lord," he called out across the water, "if it is truly you, command me to come to you on the water." There was a pause, a breath. The waves moved gently beneath the moonlight. "Come," said Jesus. And so Peter swung his legs over the side of the boat. He felt the cold air on his feet. He looked down at the dark, restless water below him. And then, somehow, impossibly, he stepped out. And he walked. One step, then another. His eyes were fixed on Jesus, and beneath those eyes, the water held him. The waves rocked and shimmered all around him, but they did not swallow him. He was walking on the sea, just as his Lord was walking on the sea, and for one brief, shining moment, Peter knew what it felt like to trust completely. But then the wind picked up. A wave crashed nearby. Peter felt the spray on his face, and his eyes dropped, down to the churning water, down to the impossible thing he was doing, and fear crept back in. He began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried out. And immediately, without hesitation, without delay, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "Oh, you of little faith," Jesus said gently, holding him steady above the waves. "Why did you doubt?" Together, they walked back to the boat. Jesus helped Peter climb in, and then he stepped in himself, and the moment his feet touched the floor of the boat, the wind died away. The water grew calm. The waves eased into long, quiet swells that rocked the boat like a cradle. The disciples sat in silence for a moment, looking at Jesus. Then, slowly, one by one, they bowed their heads. "Truly," they said softly, "you are the Son of God." And the boat moved on across the still, peaceful water, toward the other shore, toward the light that was just beginning to glow on the distant horizon, while the stars above kept faithful watch over the deep, and the lake breathed in and out like something sleeping, and all was quiet and all was well. Rest now. Let the water be still. Let the wind grow calm. You are not alone on the lake tonight.